Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Study Sesh. I'm Camilla, and today we're going to be exploring the shifting landscape of human resource development. That's HRD for short. Now, HRD is all about giving people the tools, the skills, the knowledge that they need to grow and thrive in their jobs. Think of it a bit like a farmer who plants and grows vegetables, right? They're making sure that they've got the right soil, that there's enough water for the plants, there's not too much sun. It's all about making sure the plants are in the right place and have got the right support and the right means with which to produce amazing crops, tomatoes, cabbages, beans, whatever. In the veggie patch, the farmer has to be constantly aware of changing conditions to make the most of their crop that season, yeah? So in the world of work, HRD kind of plays a similar role to the farmer. Human resource development is at the forefront of really shaping tomorrow's workplace, whether it's mastering remote digital work, whether it's sharpening your team's digital skills or championing diversity and workplace wellness. All of this falls under this umbrella of HRD. So if you're curious about how the rules of HRD are themselves being rewritten by all of this digital change around us, and also how HRD can help workforces navigate those changes, you are in absolutely the right place. We're going to take a bit of a deep dive into the digital unknown here, and we're with Stanley Awase, a guru in HRD. Welcome to you, Stanley. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Camilla. I'm excited and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
So, Stanley, my first question to you has to be around the evolution of HRD itself. I mean, maybe you can talk us through some of the most significant ways in which human resource development is changing as we move deeper and deeper into this digital world of ours.
Thank you very much. I think it's very critical to actually look at the evolution because it gives us an idea of where we were, where we are, and where we're going. So if we begin with the early stages, human resource development had mostly to do with training and skills enhancement. We began with a focus on training employees to perform specific tasks, and then we moved on to beyond training and then to development, which is why we refer to it as human resource development. Then we had a slight shift to the strategic turn, or aligning human resource development with the business goals and the company strategies. Of course, then like what we're doing currently is moving to a 360-degree approach where the human resource development culminates things like individual growth, leadership, career development, the organizational culture, and so on and so forth. But to speak to the current, which is human resource development in the digital age. The digital revolution has added a new layer to human resource development evolution. Technology-driven platforms facilitate personalized learning experiences, which is enabling employees to learn at their own pace and on their own terms. It's now empowering. And of course, the human resource development is also looking at data analytics, which helps in identifying skills gap and customizing the development. So in general, we would see that nowadays, the journey of human resource development evolution is a testament to its dynamic nature and adaptability. From a training tool to a strategic driver, human resource development has grown to be an indispensable force in shaping both individuals as well as the organization.
Stanley, you talk about the changing nature of the world that we're working in and studying in and learning in. And I mean, one thing that's changed enormously over the last few years is this idea of remote working and studying. A lot of that obviously thanks being to COVID, but post-pandemic, I mean, remote work is almost becoming the new norm. I can imagine that from a human resources point of view, the real risk there is not keeping people engaged, people not feeling like they're part of something bigger as they are contributing to their company. So is there anything that you've seen about the virtual training programs, onboarding processes, anything involving HR that can help do this. Can you talk us through any interesting or cool examples of how we might keep people engaged in this new digital world that we are working in and with?
It is new that as a result of COVID-19, we all were forced to adapt. The truth is, with or without COVID-19, this adaptation was inevitable, looking at the technological advancement and the progress that we are making. So, in terms of how we can be able to still engage and still find fun in what we do when we are using online platforms. I think, for example, looking at what happened, especially during COVID-19, is that most organizations, as well as higher institutions of learning, were forced to use the learning management systems. For example, at Boston, we have what we call Core Campus, which has so many diverse functions, and students can play around. So it makes learning to be fun. Instead of just sitting there in a classroom where someone who gives you lecture, it gives you the possibility to engage with the study material in a more fun way. The same applies to organizations which use things like the Blackboard, where those who work for the organizations can be able to engage in the different platforms that have been made available. The challenge here is forcing the students or the employees to learn to navigate these platforms. Being able to navigate successfully and make use of these platforms is another. We live in a day and age where some people have decided to be old schooled, but that doesn't work anymore. You have to be able to learn how to use these new and very interesting and exciting platforms. Say, for example, you are a director in an organization and they've created a management tool which is on your phone, which you're supposed to be able to navigate through. If you can't be able to use it, it's impossible for you to train your staff. So we should look at the innovations in technology as something which will help us to be better, something which will increase our productivity, and of course, something that will make us to succeed in whatever that we're doing. If you're a student, if you're working, in whatever aspect you find yourself. So it's very important not only to have these learning management systems, but to be able to make sure that you are fully equipped to use them.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point, Stanley. We talk about how important it is to be able to learn using these platforms, but then also learning to use the platforms themselves. And in a way that speaks to a broader point, perhaps, and a broader strategy that a lot of people are starting to adopt and are being encouraged to adopt. And that's this idea of learning how to learn. So we need to be able to better understand how to learn things so that it makes it easier for us to then use those platforms to actually ingest that information. I mean, how do students and professionals cultivate this culture of lifelong learning that it seems to me is going to be really important going forward? I mean, this idea of continuous development, because that's really key, isn't it?
It is. One of the most important things one needs to take into account is that the world is changing, and we need to be able to change with the changes that are actually happening right now. If I look back, say a couple of years ago, 20 years ago, not having a computer, for example, was not a big problem. Probably not having a mobile phone wasn't really a thing. But in our today's world, if you don't know how to navigate through a computer, it becomes a very big problem, because I would say close to 99% of the organizations right now are either doing a hybrid, which is using the day-to-day being at work, or a virtual system where you can be working from any part of the world. So you cannot do that if you don't have the tools. And the tools here we refer to either your computer, your phone, or whichever tool that will help you navigate through the changes in society. So Having to cultivate the habit of learning and adapting is quite critical, because it helps you to be able to prepare yourself to be able to, work better in whatever it is that your field is. Now, in the context of human resource management, remember that the resource here is the individual. So how can I, as an individual working for an organization, better myself in relation to the changes that are happening in that organization? First, I need to identify what are the changes. For example, if the organization is now moved away from having an office where people used to go and sit, where I could easily, if I had a challenge, speak to a colleague, and now everything is online, I need to be able to equip myself. Let's speak in the context of South Africa. We have a major problem with power, which means I need to ensure that I have a backup plan if I don't have power. Secondly, connectivity. How is the internet in my facility, in my house, in my home, in my room, wherever it is, in my hostel, in school? How do I make the best out of the situation that I find myself? We know times are difficult. We know it's very difficult to pay some of the bills, but we have to change with the changes. If we don't do that, it becomes difficult for us to perform our task. Can you imagine if you're supposed to have a board meeting and you cannot attend because you didn't have power or you didn't have connectivity? It makes it a very difficult and problematic situation for the organization. Imagine if you are, for example, a human resource development trainer, and you were supposed to have a training, an e-training, where you have participants from all over the world, and all of a sudden you go off. It doesn't speak well of that organization. So we need to prepare ourselves with the changes. We need to equip ourselves with the changes, and we need to make ourselves more reliable by doing two things. Number one, upskilling ourselves from a personal level. And number two, looking at the different available training platforms in the organizations where we work and getting ourselves involved in the training, seeing that when you are better trained, you become a better employee.
Absolutely. I mean, and what role does innovation play in all of this, Stanley? I mean, in HRD, we've obviously got people contributing to systems, and I'm wondering, how can students, for instance, or people who are just starting out in the workforce, start contributing to an innovative ecosystem within their company?
I always say to students when we're dealing with them in the coursework that one of the most interesting things that you have with you is your phone. If you have access to data, if you have access to the internet, you have a powerful tool which you can use. If you go to YouTube, there are just too many cool and interesting and exciting videos that will help you to be innovative. If you go to Facebook, there are so many things there that will help you to be innovative. Now, in the context of human resource, one very interesting platform which I have encountered is LinkedIn. LinkedIn is so interesting. How it's able to present to you different jobs at different levels, and how it's able to help you and give you the necessary networking that you need with people from all over the world. Remember that with the increase in globalization, the world has become a very small place. And now in the job market, you're competing with people from all over the world. I always say globalization has its positives and its negatives. Positives in the sense that it helps us to be able to get skills that we probably would not have gotten, but negative because then it makes those who are not at a certain level not to be able to compete in the global market. So one needs to prepare themselves, knowing that the world is very competitive, and get yourself aligned with the different platforms and the different tools that you have available to you. So if you have a phone, if you have a computer, if you have access to the internet, there's just two much that you can really benefit from. The question is, what are you doing with these tools? How are you making use of them? Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, Stanley, if we talk about data and information, it's the data that's available to us on one side, sure, but then there's also another aspect to data and human resource development, and that's data analytics. I mean, it offers some really powerful insights for HRD. Could you talk about how organizations could maybe use data to drive HRD decisions? Maybe there's something particularly successful that pops to mind, or an example of how we might use data to better inform the way that we make our decisions as HRD professionals.
When we speak about data, data is very important because it helps us to be able to give an informed opinion. And most often people just speak out of perhaps their knowledge or what they think is being applied in other institutions. But when you have available data, it helps you because then it gives you a trend of what is happening, how this trend can be improved, or how this trend can be expanded. Now, in terms of organizations that are making excellent use of data available to them, I will not be able to speak to you about this without mentioning Google. If you have been using your computer, you would notice that the Google adverts are constantly changing. Why is this? Because the human resource practitioners that work for Google make sure that they see how people do their search. What are some of the key things that people are interested in terms of the search? And they use this data, this information that has been gathered to then feed you with whatever it is that you are mostly interested in. Same applies for YouTube. They gather information in relation to what are the key searches that you have been used to doing. And then they feed you with videos. So sometimes you might even be shocked to say, oh, snap, how come I have this video already available here? I was actually thinking about this. It's because there are people behind the scene who are using the data, the information that you have generated unconsciously or consciously, and feeding you back with what it is that they think you need. So I think data is very, very important because it then helps us to be able to give information that is backed with evidence instead of just perhaps following what an organization is doing or what we think has worked in the past.
So, I mean, we've got data and information on one side, we've got this huge digital revolution that we're all living through. But then, of course, on the other side of human resource development, there is also the very human aspect of it. And that means making sure people feel comfortable, that they feel seen and heard and supported. I mean, we are living in an era where inclusivity is more than just a hashtag. It is absolutely crucial to organizational stability and sustainability. So, how are educations embedding these principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion principles into HRD practices?
The truth is, currently it's difficult to find an organization where you don't have people with diverse educational backgrounds, diverse religious beliefs, diverse. The list is endless. I mean, you have people coming from different parts of the world who are all working for an organization. In fact, to make matters worse, you have organizations that have offices all around the world. So it becomes very difficult, especially that some people come from cultures that are quite different from where you might be coming from. So what is important here is that human resource development is ensuring that people feel included by this training, by this diversity training programs that are available in different organizations. That even reminds me of a story. I was once in Germany for a diversity workshop, and one of the participants told us a very interesting story. He said he went to a country somewhere in Asia, and as they were doing a training, he realized that there was something in a mug that was being passed around. Where he comes from, when you are presented with a gift, If it's something to drink, you have to consume all of it. And then the people will accept you as being one of them because they were doing a workshop. So he was given that and he drank all of it. Unfortunately, in that culture, he had to just have a sip and pass it around. So it's very important to have those workshops and those trainings where we get to understand each and everyone's culture. Where, if, for example, the challenge is on language, let's have a workshop where people are trained to be able to speak or communicate in one language so that it doesn't become a barrier. And if the problem, say, for example, is our religious affiliation, the human resource development practitioner should not put a training during Easter or Christmas, knowing fully well that you have Christians who are part of the organization. And the same applies if they are Jewish or Muslims. So you need to be aware of who are in the organization and where are they coming from, because the human aspect is very real and people take offense to you ignoring where they're coming from, ignoring their religious background, and so on and so forth.
Absolutely. And I mean, of course, we can't talk about the human aspect of human resource development without talking about employee wellness too. I mean, it's being increasingly linked to productivity. It's becoming very clear that the more content we are at work, the better we actually do our work. What innovative HRD approaches have you seen emerging that organizations may be trying to support mental health and work-life balance better for their employees?
The truth is that in the past, mental health has not had the attention it's supposed to have had. I'll use the example of what happened with UWC during COVID-19. They did establish a hotline where you could call a social worker or a counselor, especially because students did not have access to any form of support. You know, there was lockdown and you were forced to stay wherever you were. So these hotlines were very, very critical and helpful because then students had the opportunity to engage with the specialist in terms of their mental health and mental wellness. Looking at other examples, like I would speak about where I currently work, we have been given the opportunity to engage with professionals who are social workers and people who are counselors who are readily available during working office hours to engage with you and make you feel safe, because the challenge here usually is people want to be in a safe space. They want to be in a space where they can be able to speak what the challenge is without being judged and without people looking at them differently. So most organizations have had to forcefully put in systems where the workers can engage with professionals that are qualified and who are readily available. And the problem here, I must say, is that people are not making use of these facilities. In most of the casual conversations, most people don't really see the need of going to a social worker or a counselor, especially people from the Black ethnicity, if I could speak in those terms, because culturally speaking, they don't feel the need to be able to speak their challenges with someone else. But with the evolution of times and the information that is out there and the knowledge which people are getting from engaging with these professionals, it's become more and more visible that workers are now making use of these facilities, and a lot of people are benefiting. I mean, you must look at it in this way. If you are not in your 100% capacity, you are limiting not just yourself, you are limiting the organization for which you are working. We want you to be the best. We want you to produce the best quality that you can produce. So it is very important that you are treated as a whole. Everything about you needs to be taken into account. And obviously your mental health, physical health is also very important. So I always say to people, when you look at the mental, also look at the physical. Are you exercising? Are you taking good care of your health? If you are sick, are you going to a doctor, or are you waiting till when you have passed out? Because some people are stubborn. But then, you can never be able to perform well if you are not 100%. So I think organizations nowadays are doing quite well in terms of having the facilities available. What they need to do more is to have seminars where people are being encouraged to make use of these facilities. People need to be encouraged to go to the counselors, not wait until when you are now in a critical state, like most often what happens. Go, even if you think it's a very minor thing, you will be surprised. The more you engage, the more you speak out about the problem, the better you feel. I've experienced it personally, and I think it's something to encourage.
I can't agree with you more. I too have experienced it personally, and I think that it is so valuable to always remember that you are working with people. Whether you are in HRD or an employee, you are working with other human beings, and it's such an important perspective to keep in mind. Stanley, this has been fascinating. We've spoken about where we've come from in human resource development, where we currently are. I have one last question for you, and that's around where we're going. If I had to ask you to look into your crystal ball and predict for us what HRD is going to look like 5-6 years from now, let's say in 2030, what would you tell me? What do you think the changes are that we're going to see between now and the next decade?
If I were to look at the future, the one thing that stands out is artificial intelligence and robotics. It is something which a lot of people are not paying attention to, but it is fast growing. And the good thing is it's helping people. It's making us be better in whatever it is that we are doing. Sometimes people are usually very resistant to change. And sometimes we don't want to accept the reality of what is actually happening. But the truth is, if you embrace artificial intelligence, if you embrace the revolution or whatever name you want to apply to it that is happening, then you'll be able to better prepare yourself for the next 5, 6, 7 years that are coming. If you look at things, for example, like the chat GDP that is happening, a lot of people are not making use of such things, but it helps to improve your communication skills. If you look at platforms like the right-hand side, say, for example, to students who are writing their thesis or doing research work, it's helping a lot of people to be able to reference properly, but many people are not paying attention to it. So there will come a time when those things will become part and parcel of our lives. If you were not preparing yourself, then you will be out of the job market. But if you're embracing it like a lot of us are doing, then you'll be better prepared and you'll be very happy that things have changed. It's just like 50 years ago, there were no mobile phones and nobody had a problem with it. But today, if you take away the phones from the majority of the people, they become dysfunctional. So it helps to improve your lifestyle, I would say. So let's embrace it. Let's work towards improving it, and let's work towards preparing ourselves for the future.
Stanley, your insights have been so valuable and useful today. Thank you so much. And I think it really does go back to that spirit of learning how to learn and continuous development, continuous professional development through your own career, but also in that space of human resource development. Especially in this digital world of ours, I think it's important to remember that the landscape of HRD is huge and it's changing all the time. But if you do keep up, if you manage to stay up with the trends, if you stay open to learning, if you remain curious and experimental in your approach, I think there's no limit to what you can achieve.